Man, it appears that Shedeur Sanders is starting to absolutely take over this quarterback competition versus Deshaun Watson. Man, we got clips of the difference in the red zone efficiency from Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson is glaring. It's major. It's eye-popping. We got to get into it. Welcome to Keep the Vision. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share the channel, hit that bell notification, and hype the video. Let's get right into things. So this was on Twitter. From Talented Sports, and it's
the Cleveland Browns already know who their starting quarterback is. They just haven't said it out loud yet. And the strange part? The man they keep publicly defending, the veteran, the proven arm, the $230 million ghost, can't complete a clean red zone throw without gifting the defense a free possession. Meanwhile, a fifth-round pick that nobody wanted is walking into that end zone like he owns the deed. Nobody's reporting this, but the tape doesn't lie. By the time this is over, the red zone footage, the sideline reads, and the one organizational signal everyone dismissed as routine, you're going to wonder why this competition was ever called close. Let's get into it.
Over this job, I get more excited if Shedeur has a chance to take over the job because I think it's way more fun talking about Shedeur than it is the other guy. If I don't think the team's going to do that incredibly well this year, so I'm rooting for Shedeur to win the job.
Now, I still said I think what would actually be more ideal for Shedeur, ironically, would be starting the season off the bench, watching Watson most likely fail, and then coming in while the offensive line has a chance to gel. Brand new offensive line, and those weapons they're rookies on week one, but in the NFL, when guys are good, like that rookie label gets shed pretty quickly. Yeah. And then by like week 5, it's like, oh yeah, no, they're good. Like this kid's good. This guy knows exactly what he's doing.
Go back to April 2025. Not the draft room, not the podium. The moment Shedeur Sanders' name wasn't called. Once, twice, 3 times, 31 teams passed on a quarterback who by every measurable standard was a first-round talent. The crowd wasn't quiet out of respect, it was quiet out of disbelief. And somewhere in that silence, a narrative was written about Shedeur Sanders that had nothing to do with football. It was about optics, about his father, about perceived entitlement, about the kind of invisible ceiling organizations build for players they've already decided aren't their type. Cleveland took him 5th round, 4th on the depth chart, behind a quarterback on crutches, a journeyman, and a rookie drafted 3 rounds ahead of him. The outside world called it a humbling, a lesson. But here's what the outside world missed. The wound didn't break him, it sharpened him. And now, in the summer of 2026, with Todd Monken holding a clipboard in a very difficult decision, that wound is the most important thing happening in Browns football.
And honestly, the tie goes to Shedeur if they're both throwing picks.
Yeah,
does it not?
Look, I know there's like 7-on-7 picks that they'll say, well, don't ever throw the ball away in 7-on-7. You've got to. There are other purposes of these drills, but still to see like the one that Watson threw at the end of last week, I'm glad you brought it up. How is this even possible?
I'm glad you brought it up. Like there's certain picks that I've seen and they've been bouncing off of people's hands and things like that, and then there's certain picks that you see and it's like that was the wrong read. Well, not a lot of people. This is why I think that the whole completions and incompletions and touchdowns and picks thing during camp is pretty asinine, but whatever.
Watch the red zone footage side by side. Don't look at the result, look at the pre-snap read. Deshaun Watson sees pressure and his eyes go to one place, then he throws. Sometimes it's a receiver, sometimes it's a cornerback's chest. The decision is already made before he processes what the defense is showing him. Shedeur Sanders sees the same pressure and his feet reset. His eyes move. He's scanning a second window that Watson never opened. That's not athleticism. That's training. That's thousands of reps in a specific system where you were taught that the red zone is not a place to force. It's a place to diagnose. Watson is forcing. Sanders is diagnosing. The touchdowns are the outcome. The read is the story. Todd Monken praised Sanders' elite playmaking ability publicly. That phrase sounds like coach speak. It isn't. Elite playmaking ability is what a coordinator says when a quarterback is doing things in practice that are making the defensive staff frustrated. That's not a compliment you give a developmental backup. That's a phrase you use when you're buying yourself time before making an announcement. Cleveland held 2 first-round picks going into the 2026 draft, specifically to address the quarterback position. They didn't use either on a QB. Read that again.
I guess it makes me feel better, but man, if you get it wrong at the beginning of the year and then the new guy goes in there, it just makes Todd Monken look bad. Like if you pick Deshaun Watson sucks, and you put Shedeur out there and he ends up playing decent, it's going to go against Todd Monken. If you put Shedeur out there and he looks completely lost and sucks up the room, and you put Deshaun Watson out there and he looks like he knows what he's doing and he can make all the calls and do all the things, and they look like they're a pretty decent football team, it's going to go against Todd Monken because he's going to want to win.
They had the ammunition. They had the need. The entire offseason narrative was built around finding their franchise quarterback through the draft. They didn't pull the trigger. That is not an oversight. Organizations don't leave $45 million decisions on the table by accident. Sanders started 7 of 8 games in his rookie year, 59.6 completion percentage, 1,400 yards. Coming in as an injury replacement, 4th on the depth chart with no first-team reps in the preceding weeks. Deshaun Watson has had every resource Cleveland can provide for 2 full years: the reps, the film sessions, the coaching staff's undivided attention. The gap between their red zone efficiency isn't close, it's embarrassing. Stats don't start the story, but they do end the argument. When was the last time you watched a franchise publicly keep a quarterback competition open while every piece of available evidence pointed to the same answer? That's not indecision, that's management. They're protecting something. The question is, what? Let's talk about what's actually happening inside that building, because this isn't just a football competition anymore. This is identity warfare. Deshaun Watson is not just competing for a roster spot, he is competing for the right to tell himself a story that the injury, the time away, the public humiliation, none of it took away who he is. That's an identity threat in its purest form. When a man's entire self-concept is fused to a role he might lose, the body begins to compensate before the brain even registers the danger. You see it in the throws. Too hard, too fast, trying to prove something on every single rep instead of simply executing.
And a young Myles Garrett and a young Denzel Ward and a young Baker Mayfield. Man, we went 1-31, but guess what? When Baker got in and broke the rookie record, we was ecstatic. Because you know why? We had young dudes that we can look at that was doing something. And the Cleveland Browns don't need, for a successful season, they don't need to make the playoffs to be a successful season this year. All they got to do is find some young dudes that's exciting, some young dudes that we can figure out.
That's not Watson being bad. That's Watson being human, under conditions most people will never understand. But here's what makes Shedeur Sanders psychologically dangerous in this competition. He's already lost everything once. The draft, the depth chart, the public narrative, he absorbed all of it. And he's still here. That's a perceived locus of control that is almost impossible to manufacture through coaching. You either have it or you don't. Sanders operates like a man who genuinely believes the outcome is in his hands, not the coach's hands, not the front office's hands. His. Now think about Todd Monken's psychology for a second. He is a first-year head coach on a team with no margin for error and a fan base that is emotionally exhausted. Every decision he makes in this competition becomes part of his permanent record. Pick Watson, and Watson struggles, and the question becomes why Monken ignored what the tape was screaming. Pick Sanders, and Sanders struggles, and the question becomes whether Monken sacrificed wins for narrative. There is no clean answer for Monken. But here's the thing about pressure. It reveals the truth faster than any evaluation process ever could. And the truth, right now, is showing up in the red zone. Think about it from Dylan Gabriel's point of view for a second. He came into this building as a third-round pick. He started games last season. He got injured. Now he's watching 2 other men compete for a job while everyone, including the media, including the fan base, has already written him out of the conversation entirely. He sees the same red zone footage we all see. He knows what it means, and he's preparing for a season where his most likely outcome is confirming what the broadcast already decided, that he's the third option on a team that may not win many games anyway. That's a quiet pressure nobody is talking about. And quiet pressure has a way of surfacing at the worst possible moments. Franchises always tell you the answer before they announce it. You just have to read the language they didn't know they were speaking. When Andrew Gary stood at the NFL Combine and said, and I'm paraphrasing, "We expect everyone in that room to compete," those two would be no different. That's not neutrality. That's a specific choice of words designed to give Watson a public exit ramp while leaving the door open for Sanders without triggering a media firestorm. Translation? They already have a preference. They're giving the process time to confirm it publicly. The depth chart hasn't moved dramatically, but the rep distribution at minicamp has. When a coaching staff starts quietly building more of the weekly game plan around a specific quarterback skill set, the quick reads, the designed rollouts, the underneath routes that reward processing speed over arm strength, that's not evaluation anymore. That's installation. They're not testing Shedeur Sanders anymore. They're teaching him the offense they plan to run in September. And the red zone package, the very footage that's circulating everywhere right now, is not a highlight reel. It's a preview. But to understand why this moment matters so much, we have to go back to December 2025. Not the stat line, the situation. Shedeur Sanders entered a Ravens game as a fourth-string emergency option with no preparation, no first-team reps, in a defense that knew exactly what he couldn't do. He went 4 of 16. The broadcast had already written the obituary. 1 week later, in Las Vegas, with a game plan actually designed around him, he won the game. That's the data point nobody weighted correctly. The difference wasn't talent, the difference was preparation. The difference was a coaching staff that finally pointed the offense in his direction instead of around him. Now imagine what happens when that preparation is week 1 through week 18. This situation is bigger than a quarterback competition. Inside that locker room, 52 men have already formed an opinion. They're not broadcasting it, but veteran offensive linemen know which quarterback makes their job easier. Wide receivers know which arm gives them the most natural catch radius. Running backs know which read option threat forces the linebacker to hesitate an extra half second. The players already know. And in NFL buildings, when players know something before the announcement, the culture shifts to match what they know, not what the press conference says. That's the locker room level. At the season level, if Shedeur Sanders is the starter in week 1, this Browns team has a realistic ceiling. It's not a Super Bowl ceiling. Not yet. The offensive line is new. The weapons are young. Monken is still installing his system, but they have a ceiling where they can compete in games, develop real culture, and force the rest of the AFC North to take them seriously earlier than the schedule suggests they should. That matters, because competitive games in October teach young rosters things that no amount of practice ever can. At the legacy level, and this is the part I want you to sit with, if Shedeur Sanders wins this job and becomes what the red zone footage suggests he can become, the 2025 NFL Draft becomes one of the most studied mistakes in modern draft history. 31 teams passed on a franchise quarterback. One team, almost by accident, through a cascade of injuries and roster decisions nobody planned, ended up with him. That's not a feel-good story. That's a systemic indictment of how this league evaluates talent. And Cleveland will either be the franchise that recognized it in time or the franchise that had the answer and still found a way to look away. At the top of this video, I told you the Browns already know who their starting quarterback is. They just haven't said it out loud. The red zone tape, the organizational language, the rep distribution, the psychological profile of both men under pressure. It's pointing in one direction. It has been for weeks. Because underneath all of this, past the depth charts and the press conferences and the prediction markets giving him 53% odds on a job he should own outright, there is a man who absorbed the single most public rejection in recent draft history, who walked into a building as the fourth option and quietly outworked every option above him. who does not perform like a man waiting to be told he belongs. He performs like a man who already decided. The Cleveland Browns now have to decide if they see the same thing he sees in himself. So here's the question I can't stop thinking about. Is Todd Monken about to make the most important, correct decision of his head coaching career? Or is he walking into the same trap every Browns coach has walked into for 25 years, where the right answer was right there, and somehow they still found a reason to hesitate? Drop it below. I want to know where you stand.